welcome. You're in the Yoga Nook with Robbie. I'm Robbie Willick, and today we're going to go through a super gentle 4-pose series that's designed to get the lower back and the hips moving more freely. As always, you should take things at your own comfort level, at your own pace, only do what feels good, and take permission to make modifications to whatever I'm suggesting. We're going to start in a pose called Supta Konasana. We're going to use some props for this. If you have some yoga blocks handy, we're going to use a couple of blocks. If you don't have blocks, you can use some big textbooks or some food storage containers, some block-like substance. Article. Also, some bolsters. If you don't have bolsters, you can use a blanket that's folded up a number of thicknesses, so maybe about 6 to 8 inches of thickness. Something thicker or something thinner would be fine. Basically, you're going to use your blocks to have a little support for your bolster, and then your back is going to rest on your bolster. So I have my one block towards the head of the mat on its medium height. I have another block just a couple of inches closer to me at its lowest height, and I'm going to rest my bolster on top of these blocks. You may also want to have a couple of blocks or bolsters or rolled up towels or folded up blankets close by for an option in our position. We're going to begin lying on our backs on the bolster. So here my pelvis is very close to the low end of the bolster. And I'm simply going to lie back on my bolster. I'm going to alter my position so I have some support for my head. I don't want my head to be tilted very far back. I really want to have more of a neutral position for my head, or at the very most, just the slightest back bend. But if you start to feel a little bit of dizziness, nausea, lightheadedness, some unusual phenomenon with the eyes, maybe having a little bolster or a pillow so your head is even a little bit further forward. To begin, you may want to have some bolsters snuggled up right close to the hips. We're going to start with our soles of the feet on the mat, in about the center of the mat, and our knees together. Arms can be anywhere that's comfortable. A nice position to open up through the chest is to have the arms by your sides, maybe the hands about 2 feet away from the hips with the palms facing up toward the ceiling. And with the legs, I'm simply going to open my knees. So I'm going to bring the soles of the feet so that they're touching each other. The feet are supporting each other. And then I have my bolsters, the very upper part of my outer thigh and the lower part of the outside aspect of the shin is having some support on my bolster. So I just have a nice gentle opening through the hips. If you're feeling too much strain already through the inner thigh area, some discomfort in the lower back, you maybe want those knees to be a little bit closer together. So maybe folding up your towel or your blanket a little bit more thickly so that you have a little bit more support, or really drawing them right close in to the hips. That might help to create a little bit more of a narrowing of the space between the knees and more comfort through the thighs. But we want to begin fairly close with the heels in towards the pelvis. Some people really try to get the heels quite in there and can sometimes create a little bit of a hamstring spasm, like a Charlie horse through the hamstrings. So, be forgiving, be gentle. Don't have to get the heels right in there. You want to feel comfortable through the knees as well. The closer the heels get to the pelvis, the more tension can come to the front of the knees. So comfort through the knees, comfort through the hamstrings. We're simply letting the legs relax in this supported position. Your eyes can be open, your eyes can be closed. Our goal here really is to feel comfortable through the pelvis, through the lower back, through the legs, through the spine. A nice supported feeling for your head where you're not having your head bent too far backwards or pressed too far forwards. More of a neutral position for the head and neck. We're simply going to rest here for about 30 seconds to 60 seconds. During that time, you can use a few devices to bring your mind more in line with the stillness of the body. One of the big challenges of yoga is to bring some quietness to the mind. If your mind is very active, you've had a busy day, a lot of things going on, causing stimulation of your thoughts and emotions, it can be challenging, but one thing you can do over and over again is bring your attention to your breath. So we'll talk more about that in a minute, but after 30 to 60 seconds in this position, we're going to make a little shift, just a slight movement, maybe an inch or two of the heels moving away from your pelvis. You might need to change the position of your bolsters. And when we move the heels away from the pelvis, we want the knees to reset into a comfortable open position. We're not using, we're just using gravity rather to let the knees open. We're not trying to force our knees down toward the floor. Just let that happen naturally, whatever position your knees come into with your supports. And then checking in with your breathing again. In this supported position with your rib cage supported, we're going to feel a little bit more expansion through the front body with our in-breath. Feeling an expansion through the belly, feeling an expansion through the lower part of the rib cage, feeling an expansion through the middle part of the rib cage, and the very last part of the in-breath, feeling just a little puff of air coming into this upper rib cage, collarbone area. And then with your out-breath, just a nice passive release with the out-breath. You don't have to force it. We want to maybe draw a little bit more air in with the in-breath, really getting that nice full expansion through the front body and the belly and the rib cage. With your out-breath, just a nice, natural, soft recoil of the belly and the chest. Again, after 30 to 60 seconds, making that little shift, just bringing the heels an inch or two away from the pelvis. This helps to change the angle of the stretch around some of the muscles of the hips and the large muscles of the lower back, the hip flexor muscles that are having a nice supported release in this position. Many of you may not even perceive this as a stretch, like a tight, stretchy feeling. But as we change the position of the legs, moving the heels further away from the pelvis, we are creating a very subtle, a very gentle lengthening of the hip flexor muscles, which are very tight on most people. And this is a very subtle way to create a relaxed lengthening of these muscles. There are deeper ways to do this, more intense poses where you'll feel an outright stretch sensation of these muscles. But they're tight from sitting in seats, and they're tight from walking and running and doing fitness, and they're tight from driving, these hip flexor muscles. So tight, it's nice to take more gentle opportunity to create some softening and lengthening of those muscles. This is a great prep if you're doing something like pigeon pose, doing something that is this nice, more subtle release before we get into a more intense stretch. But we're keeping this class today on the super subtle side. Again, every 30 to 60 seconds or 120 seconds, creating that length, that distance increasing between the heels and the pelvis. So we're going from a short, compressed diamond shape as the space between the legs to a more elongated, lengthened diamond shape as the space between the legs. This takes a few minutes to go through, 5 or 6 minutes, but again, if you're doing this pose on your own, in your own time, in your own practice, it's a nice one to begin with, especially if you just need to land in your practice. You just need to have some physical stillness and let your mind kind of integrate with that physical stillness, bringing some stillness to the mind by focusing on your breath or focusing on sensations in your body. Just a nice way to create that better mind-body balance or mind-body connection. And when your legs are almost lengthened, but a little bit of a bend still in the knees, you're not going to get too much more out of this pose. So 5 or 6 different positions, again, that 1 or 2 inch lengthening of the heels away from the pelvis at a time. So we're going to come out of this pose, just bring our bolsters and set them to the sides. If you have a yoga strap, we're going to use our strap. If you don't have a strap, you can use a fitness band, you can use a belt or a rope, you can use even a long beach towel. And what we're wanting to do is, well, I'm going to keep a bolster at my head or folded up blanket or a folded up towel. We're going to do a supported restful position, a variation of Janu Sirsasana, which translates to the head to knee stretch, which is really not what we're trying to achieve. One of the benefits of this pose is a lengthening through the backs of the legs, the hamstring muscles, and tight, again, on a lot of people for a number of different reasons. But this is a nice, we're going to do about a 2 to 3 minute hold on each leg. We're going to come onto our back body. So lying down on your mat, having your head supported on a blanket or a bolster, so you have just a little bit of a forward bend at the neck. It's not absolutely necessary, but it does intensify very modestly the stretch sensation through the backs of the legs. So we're going to start with our feet about hip distance apart. Our knees are bent, so comfortable tension through the front of the knees. Our pelvis is supported on the mat. We're going to keep our left leg bent, and we're going to take our right leg and we're going to place the strap around the arch of the foot or the ball of the foot just before the toes. You can also do a little wrapping of your strap around the hands so you don't have to hold on for dear life. Just nice little tension so the arms can hold on, but you're not really having to grip that strap intensely. So you don't have to straighten this right leg completely. A little bit of a bend, especially initially, is important for safety and comfort. If you have a lot of flexibility, maybe you're straightening that leg right off the get-go, but not essential. In this position, you may already be feeling a nice stretch through the back of the right leg. You may feel it in other places. If you want to intensify that stretch through the back of the right leg or around the right hip, you can do that in a few ways. You can modestly straighten the bend at the knee. You can pull the top of the right foot down towards your body on the floor, increasing the stretch sensation through the calf area. Or you can draw the leg as a whole slightly closer towards the floor, so bringing the thigh closer towards the belly, exploring it very modestly here, so that you increase that stretch sensation through the back of the leg and variably throughout the hip. You can induce a little motion. You can do a little side-to-side motion of that right leg if you want. You can even do a very subtle circular motion. You can explore a little bending of the knee and a straightening of the knee. You don't have to keep perfectly still. It's okay to explore a little bit of movement with your positions. And I suggested we were going to hold this for 2 to 3 minutes. You can hold it longer. You can hold it 5 minutes. Even 10 minutes, it might be a little bit long for this pose, but 5 minutes, you're going to get a nice, deep, comfortable stretch for the fascia, the connective tissue that's really in relation to everything, the muscles, the bones, the nerves, the blood vessels. But 5 minutes, certainly going to get some good benefit out of that. Not essential though, you can get some benefit holding for as little as 30 seconds, but I think a minute, 2 minutes, or 2 to 5 minutes is a nice kind of target for this specific stretch. We've already been working with this for about 2-3 minutes. Another way to deepen the stretch, if you want to, is to explore straightening the bent knee. So on the left knee, I'm just walking the toes away from my pelvis, doing a little wiggle of my heels so that I can start to straighten that left leg. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. You can even have a bolster underneath that left knee for a little bit of support, or even come into more of a straightened position. You can see that as I bend my leg fully on that left side, there's a little tendency for my right leg to kind of move closer to my left leg. That's indicating that there's some tension on those structures, the hamstring muscles that are intensified by the movement of my left leg. So if that feels too intense for you, again, just come into a bit of a bent knee position on that left leg. To come out of this pose, we're simply going to let the right knee bend. We'll take that strap away, bring the right foot down to the floor. And we'll come to the other side. So placing the strap around the arch of the left foot, beginning again with a elevation of that left leg, so the sole of the foot facing the ceiling, but that left knee does not have to be perfectly straight. A little bit of a bend in that left knee, totally fine, perfectly appropriate, especially as we're just introducing our bodies to a new position. You don't need to jump right into the most extreme manifestation of that pose, just keeping it modest, comfortable for you. It's important for safety's sake. If you're working into pain, you're having a lot of shaking in the leg, let the knee bend. If you want to intensify the pose, again, our options, you can straighten the bend at the left knee. You can pull the top of the left foot down toward the floor, top of the foot towards the shin, feeling more intensification of the stretch through the calf. Or you can begin to draw the leg as a whole down toward the floor, or the shin, rather, the thigh in towards the belly. You can also explore walking that right foot further away, the heel moving away from the pelvis. As you do that, feeling an intensification of the stretch through that left leg. Again, there's a tendency as I go into full straightening, full extension of that right knee for my left leg to kind of move down a little bit, indicating that, yeah, I'm under stretch through there. If that's too much for you, again, bend that right knee. Keep it comfortable. We're trying to find that nice balance between having comfort in our poses, our positions, but within that comfort, not total comfort, we really want to find a challenge where you're feeling a modest pulling sensation. It's tolerable, it's enjoyable, but you have a sense that you're kind of teasing the edge of your flexibility and giving yourself that flexibility challenge. If you're doing this on your own practice, again, a nice way to kind of anchor the mind into the present moment is to focus on your breathing, just simply listening to the sound of your breath in and out, feeling the movement of your body as you're breathing in and out, the warmth, the coldness of the air as it's coming in through your nose or your mouth and leaving the nose and the mouth, different ways of attending to the breath to kind of focus and calm your mind, or simply bringing your mind, your attention to the sensations you're feeling, the strengthening sensations, the stretching sensations that you're feeling in the pose, and just keep coming back to it. How does it feel now? How does it feel now? How does it feel now? Asking yourself that question, attending to the sensations, and modifying as you need to either ease the tension for more comfort or deepen the stretch for a little bit more challenge, finding that appropriate challenge for you. To come out of this pose again, simply letting that left knee bend, and we'll take the strap and we'll put it to the side. Our third pose is going to be a variation of Setu Bandhasana, the half bridge pose. And we're going to start quite modestly. So this is a hip flexor opener. The hip flexors, again, deep muscles that originate in the lower back area, in the front of the spine, crossing the front of the hip, or starting just above the hip, crossing down to attach just below the knee. And we come into a relative back bend to stretch these muscles. We're going to start very modestly, even with just a towel folded up twice, maybe 4 times, or a bolster that's about 4 inches thick, 6 inches thick. This might be a sufficient back bend for many people. You can have close by either a set of blocks to make some modifications, or maybe another bolster or another towel if you are wanting to deepen the stretch. We'll just keep those there for some adjustments. We're going to start by coming onto the bolster and lying down. So shoulder blades in contact with the floor, your head is in contact with the floor. And we're simply going to straighten one leg at a time. Even being in this position with our pelvis resting on the bolster in a bit of an elevated position, this can be, for some people, quite an intense hip flexor stretch. And that's fine. If they're very tight for you, you have some work where you're seated a lot, you are doing fitness where you're engaging your hip flexors, like a lot of walking, training for a half marathon. Those hip flexor muscles are going to be tight. This might be a good flexibility challenge for you. So you can stay here again, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just exploring, depending on how much time you have, what feels comfortable for you. If you do not feel too intense of a stretch here, well, maybe you want to introduce a little more elevation for the pelvis. So to do that, you can sit up and make a modification, or you can engage your core, lift your pelvis up, place another bolster on top of your existing bolster, rest your pelvis back on your bolster setup, and maybe one leg at a time extending or straightening at the knee. Even one leg might feel like a suitable stretch on one side, and then you can change it up to the other side. Or you can try 2 legs at a time. You can see my pelvis is elevated here. I'm in a relative back bend. My belly is up toward the ceiling. You can let your legs flare out to the side. Just let the feet flop out to the side. You can even increase the distance between the feet, kind of spreading the feet a little bit further apart. If this feels compressed or strained through your lower back, well, you can come back to one knee bent, maybe take one bolster out. And if you want to increase the height further, you can use your blocks. Maybe starting on the low height of the blocks, resting your bolster on top. I think 2 bolsters for me is going to be a little too much, so I'll just use 1 bolster. I have my blocks right together on the low height. Place my bolster on top. Sit up, using my arms to guide me back down. And then finding either one leg at a time or both legs at a time. Just a little stretch out. Arms can be anywhere, out by your sides. You can have longer stretch arms reaching out over the head. This might be an intensification of that stretch for you. Or you can have your hands resting on your rib cage. As we're in this position, we have some tension through the abdominal area just because of our position, and it really draws our attention to the breath, especially that inhalation phase. Can really focus on drawing the breath into the lower part of the rib cage and the abdomen. As we breathe in more deeply, we feel that taut sensation intensifying. We want that complete breath though, so feeling an expansion through the belly, an expansion through the lower rib cage, expansion through the middle rib cage, and that last little puff of air again with the in-breath in through the collarbone area, and then exhaling, a recoil through the belly, recoil through the lower rib cage, recoil through the middle rib cage, and that last little puff of air released from that collarbone area. To come out of this pose, you can stay here longer if you're really enjoying it. We're going to let both knees bend one at a time. If you want to, you can engage more of just the full expression of Setu Bandhasana, where we just lift the pelvis up from the bolster setup. Move these bolsters off to the sides. Remove your blocks. You can hang out here for a few seconds, a good core strength challenge, engaging the muscles of the lower back to keep the hips elevated, engaging the glute muscles to keep the pelvis elevated. You want to keep your breath flowing. This is an inverted pose where the head is below the level of the heart, so there is a change in pressure to the head. If you have glaucoma or high unmanaged blood pressure, history of stroke, maybe not the most appropriate position for you, so you can come down out of this position. Any inverted pose you want to keep very modest. Also, keeping the breath flowing. If we're holding our breath, there's a tendency for the blood pressure to elevate, so we want to keep our blood flowing in these more strengthening versions of the pose. This is just a add-on should you wish to explore a little bit more of that strength component of Setu Bandhasana, the half bridge pose, into lower down. Just letting the spine roll, a nice wave-like motion, one vertebra at a time, a couple vertebrae at a time, reconnecting with your mat, reconnecting with the floor. And when the pelvis is in contact with the mat, we can just have a little release for the hips, a little side-to-side motion of the knees, keeping it very modest. Even only 5-10 degrees to the side with the knees, we're going to create a little bit of a movement of the joints in the lower back, inducing a bit of a twist of the spine or a rotation of the vertebrae or rotation of the spine. It doesn't have to be a big sweeping movement over to the side, and it should be a slow movement, especially if you have some strain or tightness, mobility issues through the lower back area. Our final pose today is going to be a version of the pigeon pose, Supta Kapotasana, or figure 4. You might know it as figure 4. And we can do this in a couple of ways. I'll show the most basic version of this, and then you can explore some intensifications if you like. So we lie on our back, our knees are bent again about hip distance apart with the feet, and simply keeping the left foot in contact with the mat, we'll cross the right knee, cross the right ankle over the left leg so that the right ankle is just resting below the knee or at the base of the thigh on the left side. Now, for some of you, this position might be a good enough stretch through the hip area on the right is where you'll typically feel that. If you're not feeling that too intensely, you can explore by bringing that left heel closer to the butt, as long as that's comfortable for your left knee. Or you can lift the left leg off the floor, drawing the legs in towards the chest, the abdomen and the chest. To maintain this position, it's a bit of a core challenge. You'll feel a tensing of the abdomen. That's not essential. You can have a little bit more of a restful position. So you can do this against a wall or a cabinet. I'll turn 90 degrees so you can see what I do here. Coming into that same position, this time I have my same thing, the right knee crossed over just below the left knee. And you can hold on if you wish, taking your right hand through this triangular space of the legs, your left hand wrapping around the outside aspect of the legs. Holding on here, you just might have your arms here for a little bit of support, or you can take your left foot away from the wall if you wish for a few seconds, for a bit of time, and draw the knees, the legs in toward the chest, feeling an intensification of the stretch sensation, probably more on the right leg, but it varies and from person to person, and it depends where you have some tension in your body. You can reconnect with the wall or piece of furniture, stable, steady piece of furniture if you're using that. You can even do this with your heel resting on an ottoman or coffee table or a sofa, your left heel just resting on the top of the seat of a chair or your sofa or something that's comfortable for your heel. Simply holding this position. Again, focusing on that stretch sensation. It's a good way to draw your mind away from random thoughts or thoughts of the past or thoughts about the future, and just stay with your body in the present moment with what you're doing, thinking or attending to those sensations in your body as you change your pose or as you deepen or lighten up on the intensity of the pose. Or again, bringing your focus to your breath. Very simple ways to help still the mind and help to create a little bit more of a ability to relax. The more you are able to kind of integrate that stillness of the mind with the stillness or movement of your body, the easier it is to access a more relaxed state of engaging with the world and easier access to the component of your nervous system that is active when you're in a restful state, the parasympathetic nervous system. When you're really in a parasympathetic state, you're engaging the healing mechanisms, the processes and mechanisms of your body that can help to restore and repair your body, most active when you're at rest, deeply relaxed, or asleep. So let's switch up to the other side. We'll just stay in this position. We'll uncross the leg. And we'll take the right foot so the sole of the foot in contact with the wall, or the right heel resting on a seat surface. And we'll cross the left leg over. If you feel too much of a stretch here, your option would be to kind of shuffle away from the wall a little bit. That's going to ease that stretch sensation. If you want to deepen a stretch, you can scoot your pelvis a little bit closer to the wall. And if it feels okay for you, you can take your left hand, move it in that triangular space between the legs, your right hand holding on at the outside aspect of the right thigh, and just a little drawing in of the legs towards the belly and the chest. Some people like to extend, to straighten at the knee, the right leg. I didn't demonstrate that on the other side, but that is an option, or to keep it bent with the sole of the foot resting against the surface. Or you can even just let the right knee completely bend so that you have the back of the calf coming to rest against the hands, the backs of the hands. If you want to deepen your stretch, do it very modestly, always little micro movements. We're not trying to deepen a stretch with quick movements, with movements that are too large. You're thinking of really fractions of centimeters, millimeters of movements, just slight increases in the change. Here we would just do a slight drawing of the knees or the legs closer to the abdomen and the chest. If you feel a pinchy sensation on this side through the left hip, the front of the left hip, the groin area, well, maybe you're reaching the end range motion of your hip in this position and you don't want to force it. Again, never working into pain. Pain is an indication that you're going too far, and pain signals should be respected. If you're feeling some pain, reduce the intensity of the stretch. Again, bring that right foot back into contact with the wall, or move the legs further away from the abdomen and the chest. When you're ready to release this position, simply uncross the legs. You can draw the knees in toward the chest, holding on at the front of the knees, tops of the shins, or maybe the hands just around the backs of the thighs, letting the calves fold down on top of the hands. Maybe a slight rolling motion side to side if that feels comfortable for your lower back. And we're going to take our time to come up to a seated position, any comfortable seated position in your own way, in your own time. Going to finish our practice with a little grounding, feeling stable and supported through the pelvis and the foundation of your legs. Relax through the shoulders, a lifted, lengthened feeling through the spine. Without straining, a feeling of the sense or a feeling of the crown of the head moving away from the pelvis, Nice lifted but light, lengthened feeling of the spine extending from the foundation of our pelvis and our legs. And with your next out breath, if you wish, you can sweep the arms overhead. If it's comfortable for the shoulders, bringing the hands close together or together. Exhaling, we're going to draw the hands down to the heart center. Pause for a moment. Just a moment of acknowledgement for yourself. A moment of gratitude toward yourself for taking some time to do something that's healthy and healing for your body, and bringing your mind and your body into more balance, and your spirit into better balance with your body and your mind. Namaste.